Part 44. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 431. The emperor thought of Prince Ji's family. This family was originally common, but Prince Ji's son and his wife were famous for their ability to have children. The couple gave birth to 6 sons and 1 daughter. The emperor was envious of it and even had other thoughts. In the end, he still endured it. Lived. He did not seek to seize his wife, but he brought the concubine's younger sister into the palace, namely Linjiu. Linjiu was not as fertile as his sister at all. Thinking of what happened in the paddock, the emperor easily connected a thread. However, Linjiu was related to Prince Ji's mansion. Does that really prove that Prince Ji's mansion was the instigator of this matter? The emperor always felt that things were not that simple, or perhaps because as an emperor he was sensitive to imperial power, he felt that he was not just the enemy of King Qi. But as a monarch, just sensing that the other party has a motive is enough to take action against them. Not long after Shenjia returned to the capital, the emperor had a secret talk with his young confidant who had just been promoted for only half an hour. The next day, the court launched a vigorous impeachment operation, and the target of impeachment was the Qi prince's mansion. The late emperor only had one younger brother, King Ruo, who died because of his treason. Although King Qi was only the cousin of the late emperor, he was the closest blood relationship with the emperor today. The old King Qi was also the second highest ranking member of the royal family. The elders have a high status within the clan. In recent years, because of his filial piety, the emperor has turned a blind eye to many matters in Prince Ji's mansion, and the power of Prince Ji's mansion has become stronger and stronger. However, no matter how powerful you are, if you don't have soldiers in your hands, it is nothing more than fish and meat on the emperor's chopping board. In the eyes of outsiders, Prince Ji's palace was extremely powerful. After someone was impeached and approved by the emperor, countless ministers followed him and wanted to step on him. From the time when the descendants of the Prince of Qi occupied fertile farmland, to seizing the women of the people, and taking on all the lawsuits, in the end even the old Prince of Qi himself was exposed for the scandal that happened decades ago. The Prince of Qi's own ass was not clean, and the building was about to collapse, and the corners were hidden. All the enemies inside appeared. For several days in a row, the victims of Prince Ji's palace came to beat the Dengguan drum, and there was not even the slightest sign of injustice. The emperor originally wanted to punish the Prince of Qi, but in less than half a month, the Prince of Qi deprived him of the throne and the whole family, men, women, old and young, were exiled to Lingnan. Once very prosperous, the Prince of Qi's mansion, which was about to aspire to the throne, fell down and scattered. The properties of the Prince of Qi's mansion spread all over the capital, making the rich and powerful in the capital well fed. Kick him out quickly, we don't have this kind of in-law in Duke Xiongguo's mansion. It was rare for Duke Xiongguo's wife to lose her composure in front of the servants. At this time, she wanted to eat alive the person who came to report to the Lord Rongjia County. But before the servant had time to act, a slender figure walked in. The marriage between my mother, my second brother, and the head of Rongjia County has all been cleared up in front of the Holy Master. Although Prince Ji's palace has been defeated now, I believe in my promise. How can I offend my future daughter-in-law because of family affairs? Qin Jing said warmly. Mrs. Xiongguo and Qin Er, who was hiding behind her, all looked at him in disbelief. My son, do you want your second brother to marry the sinner? Qin Jing nodded and said, the men in Prince Ji's palace were guilty, and it was not the women who caused the trouble. They were not at fault in the first place, so why should they be too harsh? Qin Er jumped up anxiously and said, brother, you want to marry the girl married by Mr. Ge, but instead you watch my brother and I fall into the pit of fire. After marrying a criminal, you are so cruel. Qin Er completely forgot that after he made the marriage arrangements, He often showed off to Qin Jing that he was the future prince-in-law, but Qin Jing never cared about him at that time. Qin Jing frowned and said, "Didn't you ask for this marriage yourself? When the Rongjia County lord fell into the water, and you rushed to save her, wasn't it because you loved her?" When Qin Er heard this, he didn't know for a moment whether Qin Jing was being weird or if he really thought so. Mrs. Xiongguo said, "Even if your brother admires her, I will not allow the sinner to enter the house later." Qin Er glanced at his mother gratefully and said, "The past is the past, today is today, I have long disliked her." Qin Jing frowned and said, "Chao Qin Machu, this is not what a gentleman would do." Qin Er muttered, "I am not a gentleman." Qin Jing turned to Mrs. Yenguo and said, "Mother, the road to Lingnan is far away and full of miasma. The lord of Rongjia County is already weak. Why don't you let her marry her second brother in advance? This will save our Duke Xian's palace. Even if you don't pity her for being a weak and helpless woman, you should still consider the reputation of the Duke of Xiongguo." Since Mrs. Xiongguo decided to break the engagement, she obviously had her own logic. Now everyone in the capital knows that Prince Ji has lost the Sacred Heart. If we want to fulfill the engagement at this time, then it will be true you have made the Holy Emperor dissatisfied, and you probably don't want our Duke Xiongguo's palace to end up with the same fate as Prince Ji's palace. Don't worry, I will send someone to send some silver to support you later, which can be regarded as the reputation of our Duke Xiongguo's kindness. Of course, Mrs. Xiongguo had no intention of giving away any money. She had always been short-sighted, and at this time she just wanted to coax this old-fashioned eldest son over quickly. Qin Jing knew that this was just her mother's perfunctory words, and said, "Your Majesty is kind and generous. He has already dealt with Prince Ji's house and will not be angry because of the younger generation. Mother, even if the second brother does not get married at this time, can he still live without it for the rest of his life? Marriage? There is always a marriage." Qin Er listened to his eldest brother talking about it for a long time, but he got annoyed and said, "Eldest brother is so worried about the Rongjia County princess and worries that she has nothing to rely on. Why don't you just marry her? The eldest brother wants to destroy the name of Duke Xiongguo's promise to keep his promise. You can cancel the marriage in your hometown and marry someone else." Before Qin finished speaking, Mrs. Xiongguo covered his mouth. "What nonsense are you talking about? How dare you mess with your eldest brother for the sake of a criminal?" Even if Mrs. Xiongguo was short-sighted, she knew that this marriage in Ji's hometown was extremely important. Qin Er's eyes flashed with hurt when his mother accused him so. When Qin Jing heard this, she felt angry at first, and then as if she had thought of something, she suddenly looked at her mother steadily and said, "If we really want to break off the engagement, I can break off the engagement with my second brother. People can't believe it if you don't. I will go and tell my father and grandmother to cancel my marriage first, and then my second brother's marriage." When Mrs. Xiongguo heard this, she was shocked. She knew Qin Jing and knew that since the eldest son said this, even if he really thought so, he could really do such a thing. "Ah Jing, nothing is more important than you, isn't it, just to fulfill the engagement? Mother will send someone to invite your future sister-in-law to come in." "Don't be impulsive," Mrs. Xiongguo said. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 432. The words that Mrs. Xiongguo blurted out made Qin Er's eyes darken. "Mother, I will not marry the guilty queen," Qin Er retorted. However, Mrs. Xiongguo was not as concerned about her second son's feelings as before. Instead, she eagerly grabbed the eldest son's sleeve, not daring to take any chances, and said, "Ah Jing, you are the eldest son of the Duke of Guo. This family will count on you sooner or later. Since you think Rongjia is pitiful, then our Duke of Guo will marry her. Don't worry, mother will treat her well and let the whole capital know that we show off." Kuagongfu is a family that values trust and justice. When Qin Er heard this, his dissatisfaction reached its peak, and he said, "If mother wants to coax my eldest brother, do I have to sacrifice me? My eldest brother cares so much about Rongjia County Lord, who knows if they have something going on." Crack. Before Qin Er could finish his words, there was a slap mark on his face. He looked at his mother in disbelief. This was the first time in his life that he had been beaten. Mrs. Xiongguo looked away with a guilty conscience, and then reprimanded, "If you dare to talk nonsense again, I will ask your father to use domestic violence against you." Qin Er stared at her, then ran out without saying anything. Qin Jing frowned and said, "Mother, I'm going to see my brother." Mrs. Yenguo immediately pulled her eldest son and said, "He has a bad temper. I will go and coax him later. You are busy with official duties during this period. It is rare for you to go home. Take a good rest. Your mother made a special trip to stew soup for you. Once you will have to try it." Qin Jing shook his head and said, "I still have official duties in my yamen. I heard about the incident of Rongjia County Lord, so I took the time to come back for this trip." "Okay, since there are many things going on in the yamen, you should go back quickly. I will go to your brother's place to persuade him," Mrs. Xiongguo said. Qin Jing thought that her second brother and her mother had always been close, so she didn't think much about it. She just warned, "Mother, a man should rely on himself, not his wife's clan, to establish himself. You have to explain this to his second brother carefully." Shen Changfeng said earlier, like his second brother, he has the reputation of being a playboy in the capital. Now he is working as an errand in the Ministry of Industry and has done several beautiful errands and won many praises from His Majesty. Mrs. Xiongguo also heard about this, curled her lips and said, "Shen Changfeng is your Majesty's nephew. Your Majesty prefers him. Who knows if he has really changed his gender?" Qin Jing said, "Mother, these are all rumors that everyone else has said. Your Majesty really wants to give him a good title, can't you? Since so many officials are watching the important events of the court, how can it be wrong? Besides, Shen Changfeng is also only by having a famous teacher and discipline him can he be successful today." Mrs. Yenguo's heart was moved and she said, "Ah Jing, you and Gu Mingda are officials in the same court and have a close relationship. Otherwise, you go ask him and I will send your second brother over and let him teach you for a while." Qin Jing shook his head, "Master Gu has many things to do now, and even Shen Changfeng has not continued to teach. Don't worry, Mother, your son will pay attention and choose a strict teacher for the second brother." Mrs. Xiongguo nodded and said, "Okay, Ah Jing, your second brother will be counting on you in the future." Qin Jing originally wanted to talk about Qin Jingshu's situation in the palace, but until he went out, his mother never asked about his sister, so he still didn't speak. When Mrs. Xiongguo rushed to Qin Er's yard, the house had been smashed to pieces. "My son, mother knows that you are angry, so there is no need for you to vent your anger on these things," Mrs. Yenguo persuaded her in a good voice. When Qin Er saw his mother lowering her head, thinking about the slap on her face, she still didn't look good. Mrs. Xiongguo's eyes flickered and she said, "You are a man, not a woman. If you marry, you will marry. Why don't you let me do whatever you want after entering the house?" Qin Er said, "Why did my brother marry a girl from my hometown after I married the guilty minister?" Mrs. Xiongguo said directly, "Can you be the same as him?" As soon as she said the words, she realized something was wrong and quickly made up for it. "You were born to enjoy happiness. Your eldest brother is carrying the whole family on his back. His daughter-in-law is a clan daughter-in-law. She must choose the right one. If you really don't like it, Rongjia, I'll find some good ones for you." She doesn't dare to say anything about the virtues of Rongjia's mother-in-law. Qin Er lowered his head and stared at the broken porcelain on the ground. After a long time, he said, I want the coral in the eldest brother's yard. Mrs. Xiongguo frowned and said, that's what my mother prepared for your eldest brother. This needs to be spread. Qin Er turned around directly. Mrs. Yenguo Gong immediately said, okay, Mom will think of a way for you. When the time comes, you can say that coral can't stand the loneliness and seduce the man. Only then did Qin Er turn around. Mrs. Xiongguo took the tonic soup brought by the servants and said, drink it while it's hot. Mom specially asked the kitchen people to stew it for you. Among the 3 children, you are the one who loves me the most. Why don't you understand my mother's painstaking efforts? Qin Er took it casually and frowned after taking a sip. The tonic soup was stewed chicken with cordyceps. Obviously he didn't like to drink chicken soup, and the person who loved chicken soup in the family was his eldest brother. He immediately understood the so-called tonic soup. Who is the soup for? His heart, which was softened by Mrs. Xiongguo's words, suddenly hardened again. As Qin Jing expected, the emperor didn't care about the marriage of his children at all. After cleaning up Prince Qi's mansion, he also beat up the princes and nobles in the capital one by one. The emperor could finally sleep peacefully at night. At this time, in the palace, the emperor was summoning Gu Mingde. Your Majesty, I am incompetent. When I arrived, the building was already empty. Although there were some traces in the secret room, no trace of the imperial master was found. Gu Mingde bowed to apologize. That day, after interrogating several thieves in Baiyun town, he led his men to Jingui Lane without stopping. The family of the thief leader might have thought that the place was not exposed, so they failed to evacuate in time. Gu Mingde guessed that the thief leader valued his family so much that he would not reveal the matter of the person behind the scenes to his subordinates, but he would definitely tell his family something. This interrogation went smoothly, and the wife of the thief leader quickly confessed a house in the city. However, when Gu Mingde arrived at the house, even if he found a hidden secret room, he only saw traces of blood sacrifice and various talismans that made people tremble at a glance, but there was no trace of the national teacher. Forget it, you have done a good job to find so many clues through these details. Gu Iking the emperor now looked at Gu Mingde with a look of closeness and appreciation. Although Gu Mingde's main job is still teaching children, the emperor has promoted his official rank. Now the whole officialdom knows that Gu Mingde is a favorite of the emperor and will be reused in the future. After the emperor dealt with the government affairs, he went directly to Shaokong Palace. But Niuniu was not in Shaokong Palace. Where did the little girl go to play again? The emperor asked the queen mother with a smile. The queen mother smiled like an ant and said, she and Akshuan are watching fish in the imperial garden. These 2 people really don't know each other until they fight. Now they have a good relationship and play together all day long. The emperor felt a little uncomfortable when he heard this. Who knew that the queen mother continued to say, Emperor, I look at this pair of children who have been childhood sweethearts, and the more I look at them, the more they look like a couple. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 433. The emperor frowned. He suppressed the strange feeling in his heart, thinking that he really regarded Niu as his daughter. Li Xian is still young and doesn't know whether he will be successful in the future. It's too early to talk about marriage now. The emperor wanted to dismiss the matter casually. The queen mother shook her head and said, Emperor, after much thought, Niu is a lovable child, so it would be better for her to stay in our royal family. Boys of similar age to her are now attending classes in the palace. The AI family chose again and again, and still feel that Li Xian is the most suitable. He has the best homework and a good character. As long as he doesn't grow crooked in the future, he will definitely have a bright future. The emperor actually agreed with this. He wholeheartedly hoped that his unborn son would inherit Datong in the future, so he was naturally very picky about the clan members who came to the palace. The children of the clan who came to the palace were all under 10 years old. Although there were some who were very scheming, these immature children could not escape his eyes, which he had trained for many years at the peak of power. They thought they hid their ambitions very well, but in fact the emperor saw it clearly. In contrast, Li Xian had an upright character. Even though he kept saying relieving your worries, he even once said I want to be a good person. Prince and so on, but the emperor did not dislike him for this. The emperor knew very well that Li Xian would say this because this child indeed strictly demanded himself as a gentleman. Even if he could not become a prince, he could still be a wise minister in the future. It's too early to say this now. If Prince Jing's palace has other plans for him, maybe the palace would like Li Xian to marry a high-ranking official in the capital, the emperor said casually. Although the Queen Mother came up with the idea on the spur of the moment, it was obvious that she was not unprepared. At this time, she said with a smile, Emperor, the crown princess came yesterday. She mentioned Niuniu and praised her very much. She said she liked it very much. I hope to have a daughter like this in my family. The emperor asked, does the queen want to marry her now? The Queen Mother said, let's talk to Prince Jing first, so the prince no longer needs to look at each other. We can wait until the two children are older before planning the marriage. The Queen Mother had her own concerns. Li Xian was still young. If he died midway, it would be harmful to Niu's reputation. The emperor said, I will ask the Gu family later. Gu Mingda loves his daughter as much as his wife, so he may not agree to this marriage. The Queen Mother did not think this was a big deal, and said, there are few young men of the right age in the whole capital who are more suitable than Li Xian. When he grows up and has done a few good things, the emperor will reward him with a title. When the emperor listened to the Queen Mother's description, he could feel the happy picture of the future husband and wife being harmonious for a lifetime if everything goes well. But just imagining it made him feel as if he had been stung. I will remember it, don't worry, Queen Mother, the emperor said casually. While mother and son were talking, Niu took Li Xian's hand and ran in boundingly. Grandma the Queen Mother, Uncle Emperor. I went to feed the little fishes. The little fishes all like me and are rushing around me. Niu raised her head high in joy. The Queen Mother was full of pride and said, really, then our Niu is really amazing. Niu said, Brother Xian is also amazing. He can resist feeding the little fish. He gave me all the fish food and asked me to feed it. In the eyes of children, feeding small fishes and watching them eat the food they feed is a very interesting thing. Li Xian can be so restrained, and Niu really feels that he is very powerful. With restraint and humility, Xian really takes good care of my sister. The Queen Mother nodded with approval. Li Xian's cheeks were slightly red and he said, to tell you what the Queen Mother is saying, I am very happy to feed the little fish, but I am even happier to see Niu happy. Such words touched the heart of the Queen Mother, and she said, you child, like the AI family, hope that Niu will be happy. The emperor, on the other hand, felt uncomfortable hearing this. He stretched out his hand to pull Niu over and asked, my dear, do you like playing with Li Xian very much? Niu nodded vigorously, Brother Li Xian lets me take care of me again. He is also a very, very good brother. After the emperor asked, he realized that he didn't want to hear the answer at all. He just looked at the innocent look in the little girl's eyes and suppressed all the weird feelings in his heart. Niu suddenly broke away from the emperor and trotted into the inner hall. Soon she ran out holding a magnolia tree carved from wood. Brother Li Xian, you like the magnolia tree the most. I don't know what to give you as a gift, so I asked my grandfather to carve one for you. I hope you like it. The little girl brought the thing to Li Xian. Li Xian was immediately flattered. Although the wood carving was made of ordinary wood, When he thought that Niu gave it to him, Li Xian felt it was particularly beautiful. After carefully taking the wooden carving, he held it solemnly in his arms and said, "When I take it back, I want to place it on the bedside so that I can see it every day." Niu was also very happy that the gifts she gave were valued by her friends. The Queen Mother was still smiling with her aunt on her face, but the Emperor was the only one whose heart felt sour. He thought to himself that he also preferred peach blossom trees, and Niu should also know that. Why not give him a peach blossom tree carved from wood? The Emperor just felt that he couldn't stay in this place any longer, so he stood up and said, "Mother, my son is going to see concubine Shun and leave first." The Queen Mother nodded casually, waved her hand and let the Emperor leave. She turned around and still smiled to see a pair of children talking together. The Emperor left Shaokong Palace and went to concubine Shun. Concubine Shun is now 6 months pregnant with a bulging belly. The Emperor put his hand on concubine Shun's belly as usual. Through several layers of clothing, he felt the child in his belly suddenly move. Although the Emperor had felt fetal movement many times, it still made him feel very strange, even a little addictive. "Your Majesty is from Shaokong Palace?" concubine Shun asked casually. The Emperor nodded, but still placed his hand tightly on concubine Shun's belly and refused to move away. Concubine Shun said with a smile, "During this period, the relationship between Niu and young master Li Xian has developed rapidly. They always play together, and I sometimes get jealous when I look at them." The Emperor was originally focused on interacting with the unborn little beings, but after hearing these words, he suddenly felt boring and couldn't help but want to get angry. But concubine Shun was pregnant, so he could only suppress the anger in his heart and said, "Children are like this. Today they play with this person, and tomorrow they like to find other playmates, all from time to time." It seemed that in this way, he could convince himself that nothing happened. When he left concubine Shun's palace, the Emperor did not use any guard of honor, but walked slowly forward along the palace road. As an old man in the palace, Qian Rongshen was keenly aware that the Emperor seemed to be unhappy. He was so frightened that he did not dare to breathe and followed him obediently. The Emperor's footsteps suddenly stopped. He raised his head and saw the palace in front of him. On the plaque of the palace, there are 3 characters Guanja Palace written with flying dragons and phoenixes. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 434. These 3 characters were written by the Emperor himself. Now, looking at the familiar characters and the familiar palace gate, the Emperor felt that the past was just a dream. He still remembered the greasy and bloated Li Shi he had seen some time ago. He shook his head. Although he still remembered the past feelings in his heart, he didn't want to see Li Shi's face now. The Emperor turned around and wanted to leave, but the square hole on the palace gate was originally for the imperial kitchen to deliver food, and now a bloated face suddenly appeared. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" Li Shi appeared there and slapped the palace gate hard. The Emperor looked at this sudden scene and couldn't help frowning. "Your Majesty, please show mercy and let me go. Please consider the relationship between husband and wife for many years," Li Shi begged in a sad voice. The Emperor shook his head. Li Shi seemed to be fatter than before. His eyes were narrowed into a slit. He felt that it hurt his eyes if he looked at her a few more times. Li Shi didn't expect the Emperor to turn around and leave. She had thought about losing weight during this period, but Chunying never let her go, and the people in the imperial kitchen also pretended to obey. The Emperor had clearly ordered her to enjoy the offerings of Zaiyi, but the food sent by the Emperor was still very greasy, even worse than before. Even if Li Shi didn't want to eat, Chunying would force it into her mouth, and she had no way to deal with it. The most uncomfortable thing for Li Shi was that she was locked up in this dark place and didn't know what was happening outside. This unknown fear made her wonder if she still had hope of turning the tables. Now the only thing she could be sure of was that the Emperor hadn't killed her yet, and she shouldn't have reached the worst situation. However, she was locked up like this now, completely cut off from the outside world, and it was not much different from a slow death. The Queen Mother is so cruel. Her method is to torture me to death, Li Shi said viciously. She only hoped that the Imperial Master could turn the tide, but she was afraid that without her reminder, some things might get out of control. Well, you bitch, you actually sneaked here again to communicate with people outside. Chunying ran over and grabbed Li's ear. Li was very angry. Chunying had no respect for superiors and subordinates at all. She dared to let her suffer such a great humiliation, but Li decided to endure the humiliation. Chunying, I have hidden a sum of silver outside Guanzhou Palace. As long as you promise to help me do something, I can give you the money. Li took the initiative to make a deal. But what responded to her was a slap from Chunying. Well, you actually hid the money secretly. If you don't give it to me, I will beat you to death now, Chunying said viciously. Li secretly hated that her brain was broken. She actually thought that she could cooperate with Chunying. She didn't expect that the lies she made up casually would bring her great torture in the next few days. In Shaokong Palace, Li Xian had already left, and the Queen Mother held Niu Niu in her arms. My dear, never seek the skin of a tiger. You know that the enemy has ill intentions, but you still hope to gain benefits from the enemy. Who knows if it will bring you more trouble? The Queen Mother taught Niu Niu her philosophy of life. The Queen Mother naturally knew that Li had many secrets. If the Emperor had not disagreed, she would have directly interrogated Li. Nanny Sun also proposed to let Chunying go undercover in front of Li to find out the news, but was rejected by the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother felt that instead of trying hard to judge whether the news from Li was true or false, it would be better to just go for her original purpose from the beginning. The news could be inquired by other methods in the future. She just wanted Li to live a life worse than death. Sending Chunying there was only the purpose of torturing people from beginning to end. No matter how beautiful the cake painted by Li was, it was useless to Chunying. Niu Niu looked at the Queen Mother with a confused look and said, Don't worry, Queen Mother, I have good eyesight. I can tell who is a good person and who is a bad person. I am not afraid of them bullying me. The Queen Mother reached out and tapped Niu Niu's forehead. You are so powerful, why didn't you find out that concubine Lin was a bad person earlier? Niu Niu's face was blank for a moment, and the little girl quickly changed her words with her hand covering her forehead. I was bragging, Queen Mother, don't remember what I just said. The Queen Mother laughed when she heard these childish words. Okay, I won't remember Niu Niu's bragging. Next time he must not encounter such a thing again. Grandma is scared by you. Niu Niu fainted after leaving the enclosure. Because the coma was short, the Emperor and the Queen Mother thought she was frightened and didn't know that she was because of her wish. Gu Mingda and Zhang Yuniang said nothing afterwards. After all, although Niu Niu saved the Emperor with the help of the big tiger, the situation was critical. Saving the Emperor was saving Niu Niu herself. The couple was only glad that Niu Niu still had this hidden talent, otherwise they would not be able to bear the pain of losing their daughter. Li Xian returned to the prince's residence. The room of Li Shuo, who lived next to him, was empty. Li Shuo was the grandson of the king of Qi. Even though his legs and feet were not fully healed, he was not left behind in this exile to Lingnan. Li Xian placed the magnolia tree carving ornament in his arms on the bedside and couldn't help looking at it again and again. Master, you really like magnolia? Only Magnolia and Niu Niu can make you put down your book, the eunuch who served Li Xian said with a smile. Li Xian took another look at the magnolia tree ornament, but finally put it down and said, Thank you for your reminder. Diligence makes perfect and play makes waste. I have to seize the time to study and not waste time anymore. He returned to the desk and picked up the book to read. His mother, the crown prince's consort, informed him that the Queen Mother intended to match him up. Li Xian also knew that concubine Shun in the palace was pregnant, and the crown prince would most likely be concubine Shun's child. Although he lost the opportunity to compete for the throne, he was not discouraged. Gu Mingde was the top scholar. Li Xian felt that if his talent was too poor, Gu Mingde would not agree to this marriage. Besides, he could not participate in the competition for the crown prince. Although he was born in the royal palace, he could not inherit the throne. He could only rely on studying to make a way out and give his wife and son a title in the future. The queen in the palace can never be contacted. The news can go in but not out. Li Zikin frowned when he heard his subordinate's reply. He turned to look at the imperial master and asked, "The queen has fallen out of favor now, why do you have to tell her?" The imperial master said, "Your queen planted evil causes in the past, and now it has borne evil fruits. If you don't find her, how can you resolve these grudges?" Li Zikin sent people to assassinate the emperor, ready to support the Qi Huangfu in the fight for the throne, but he didn't expect that the assassination he thought was foolproof would fail for an inexplicable reason. "I told you a long time ago that ordinary means are useless, but you didn't believe it. I asked the people I sent to Baiyun town to be more careful, but you sent a few trash there," the imperial master complained. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 435. I don't know what you said to the queen, but you two have always kept things from me. If not, I wouldn't be in such a passive situation today. Faced with the accusation of the national teacher, Li Zikin would only refute it instead of calming the other party's emotions. The national teacher sneered and said, "Your Li family can be what it is today because I am helping you. You really can't tell good from bad." Li Zikin was obviously not someone who could be easily fooled. He said directly, "If you were unwilling to help us, you would not have agreed to the queen's request in the first place. Since you agreed, it is obvious that you have something to ask of her. It's a matter of mutual benefit. Why do you say that you are doing a good deed?" The national teacher did not speak at the first time, but looked at Li Zikin steadily. Li Zikin was frightened by his gaze, and when he thought of those supernatural means of mine, he was immediately afraid and said, "Calm down, I am just as unhappy as you if things don't work out. If we really have an internal conflict, we will only be laughed at by outsiders." The national teacher said, "Why do you think we have an internal conflict?" Li Zikin touched his nose and asked, "Why?" He thought to himself, "Isn't the internal conflict because the national teacher is unreasonable?" The imperial master shook his head and said, "Because we are not doing well, we are holding our breath and we are tired of each other. The more we are tired of each other, the more things will go wrong, and the situation will only get worse and worse. Do you think this kind of bad luck comes out of thin air? Because everyone returns to their place, stolen things are stolen after all." Listening to the imperial master's words, Li Zikin immediately perked up and asked, "What is stolen? What do you mean by returning to your place?" The imperial master said, "Do you think your queen is born to be the most favored in the 6 palaces?" Li Zikin felt guilty when he heard this. He thought to himself, "Isn't it? The Li family was able to get started thanks to the favor of his sister. If this is all fake, how can the Li family be so successful? I don't know what adventure your queen had that allowed her to foresee the future and steal someone else's fate. If she hadn't stolen someone else's fate first, do you think you could rise to prominence? You know in your heart that you and Gu Mingde are in a relationship of mutual growth and loss. You stole his fate to get to where you are today." The words of the national teacher sounded like thunder in Li Zikin's ears. "Impossible. I became an official based on my own ability. I didn't steal someone else's fate." How could Li Zikin admit his incompetence? The national teacher looked at him with pity and said, "You and your queen are the same. You both think that the stolen things are yours." Li Zikin said after a long time, "You helped us change our fates, and you must have benefited from it. Otherwise, how could you do it? Unexpectedly, his words aroused the hatred in the eyes of the national teacher. I got some benefit. What did I get? I have been in seclusion for more than 10 years, and my wounds have not healed to this day. Who among those who practice my way is like me? I am only over 40 years old, but my face is like an old man. The national teacher looked at Li Zikin with red eyes. Li Zikin suddenly didn't understand. Since the national teacher didn't get any benefit, why did he help to change his fate in the first place? The national teacher said coldly, I was young at that time, and I didn't know that there are people who are better than me. Who could have thought that a mistake would make me regret for the rest of my life? If it happens again, I will definitely get further and further away from your Li family. Li Zikin felt that the national teacher seemed to hate his sister very much. He touched his nose and said, you just said that we had internal conflicts because things were not going well. Now that things have come to this, we should not blame each other. The national teacher looked at him coldly and said, because we are not going well, there will be more and more mutual accusations in the future. Li Zikin said, obviously, the fate has been changed. Why is it still like this? Is it? Before he finished speaking, the national teacher looked at him coldly, are you asking if it's because I'm not good at learning skills? So I was backfired by the skills I practiced. Li Zikin didn't say anything, but it was obvious that he thought so in his heart. The national teacher said, do you think this is a problem of not learning well? It's your sister's fault. She coveted someone with a broken fate. People with broken fate only appear in legends. Every appearance of such a person will change the overall situation of the world. Who would have thought that her luck was so bad that she ran into a person with a broken fate? The national teacher just finished saying this, and suddenly realized something. He stared at Li Zikin and said, maybe she knew that this person's fate was extraordinary, so she did this. She deliberately hurt me. Li Zikin saw that the pot was thrown on his head again, and immediately said, she is a woman, how could she know so much? Ordinary women would do such a thing as changing fate? The source of all evil is your sister, the national teacher said viciously. Li Zikin actually knew that the empress in the palace had many strange things. After she fell into the water when she was young, she became weird and even dared to elope with a man. If the man was not the emperor, she would have been strangled to death by a white silk thread from her family. And there were several times when the family encountered problems, and it was her sister who foresaw and helped to avoid disasters in advance, but every time her sister used dreams as an excuse. The family benefited, and some strange things were not investigated, and the matter was passed by turning a blind eye. Even the last time Li Zikin had the opportunity to save the emperor, it was because his sister sent someone to pass the news out of the palace in advance. She is too greedy. Some people look ordinary on the surface, but in fact, life is like weeds, which will grow again in the spring breeze. She can kill in one life, but not in the second and third lives. I have been hurt by her, said the national teacher. Li Zikin couldn't just watch his family fall apart, and asked, don't you have a way to crack it? Kill her second life, wait for her to reincarnate again, and then kill her, said the national teacher fiercely. Since you want to kill her, then I will find someone to kill her. If I had known this, why would I have spent so much effort on the emperor? Wouldn't it be enough to just kill this person who ruined his life? Li Zikin said in a matter-of-fact tone. The imperial master looked at the other party's arrogant look and said casually, then you can give it a try. The person who ruined her life is Gu Mingda's little daughter. She is also the treasure of the emperor and the empress dowager. See if it is easier to kill a child or the emperor. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen Shen. Chapter 436. Li Zikin thought more and asked, when you exchanged your fate, you killed someone. Later, he was reincarnated as Gu Mingda's little daughter. No wonder my sister has been targeting her. If that's the case, you should have let me kill her directly in the previous Baiyun town incident. Why did you contain Gu Mingda? The national teacher said, you will know the reason if you kill that little girl. Li Zikin cursed in his heart that he was hiding his head and showing his tail. The national teacher rarely spoke clearly. This kind of cloud and fog was his normal state. Li Zikin was also a man of action. After he knew that Nayunia was the key to everything, he immediately found his confidant. I want you to kill someone, kill Gu Mingda's daughter. The confidant heard this and agreed without any hesitation, I am a great favor to the master. If the master has any orders, I will do my best. But just as he agreed to this, he suddenly shook and felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if a hand was pulling his heart hard, crushing it. What's wrong with you? Li Zikin stood up and looked at his confidant, who suddenly fell to the ground in disbelief. It hurts. It hurts so much. I feel like I'm going to die. The confidant's face turned pale with pain. At this time, he rolled on the ground in a mess. How could he see the neatness of the past? Find a doctor. I'll ask someone to find a doctor for you right now, Li Zikin said hurriedly. Coincidentally, at this time, the national teacher walked in slowly. National teacher, can you help to see how he is? Li Zikin urged. He knew that the national teacher was also proficient in medicine and was a Taoist doctor. The national teacher felt the pulse and then casually said, there is no hope, let someone carry him down. Li Zikin looked at his subordinate, who was originally strong and healthy and was suddenly going to die. He took a step back in fear. But the national teacher held his hand and felt his pulse. I'm in good health, there is nothing wrong with me, Li Zikin said loudly. It seemed that the louder the voice, the more it could prove that he was strong. All the hidden diseases in my body are about to break out. The state master's posture was still slow. The first thing Li Zikin felt was that the scars on his body from saving the emperor in the past suddenly started to itch, and then all the joints in his body were uncomfortable, and his stomach also started to hurt. Save me, Li Zikin said while grabbing the state master's hand. He felt it was a pity that his confidant died, and he never took it to heart when he killed people behind his back in the past, but now that he felt that he was getting closer and closer to death, he knew this kind of pain. Is it because I want to kill the person who broke my life that I suffered so soon? Li Zikin asked. The state master nodded gently. Li Zikin was full of regret. He regretted why he had this idea, and he hated the state master for not making his words clear. The imperial master suddenly stretched out his hand and pinched his face, saying, why have I been so miserable for so many years? Isn't it because I did dirty things for your sister? Your sister is lucky. She didn't say this in person. She can still be a queen in the palace safely. But you are not uncomfortable now. You must have a way to save me. Li Zikin's mind has always been very fast. The imperial master nodded and said, I have my own family method to suppress the backlash. You are not from my family. Li Zikin was tortured by the old injuries on his body at this time. He said, now is not the time to pursue who is right or wrong. The most important thing is that we must be of one mind. I will suppress the person who broke his life according to your method. It will not be good for you if I die. The imperial master curled his lips and said, you are a person who will not turn back until you hit the wall. I have the final say on what to do next. Li Zikin did not dare to refute him. The imperial master pinched his mouth open and stuffed a pill filled with blood. Not long after, Li Zikin felt that the power that only cared about himself seemed to be weaker, and all kinds of old injuries and hidden diseases on his body seemed to have disappeared. One pill can only keep you for 3 hours, the national teacher said. This pill is made with the blood of boys and girls, right? Li Zikin asked. The national teacher nodded. Li Zikin said, I just said I wanted to kill her, but I didn't do it, and she didn't suffer any loss. Am I only hurt this time? The national teacher didn't expect that this person had some brains, and he did guess right, but he shook his head and said, the person who broke his fate is a veritable favorite of heaven. There is almost nothing she can't do. As long as she wants fame and fortune, heaven will give it to her, and those who go against her will not be let go by heaven. You have already gone against her. Even if you fool around today, it will be extremely tragic in the future. Hearing this, Li Zikin couldn't help complaining in his heart, why did his sister provoke such a person? But in fact, the Li family has enjoyed all kinds of conveniences brought by Empress Li over the years. If they had not suffered now, they would not have regretted it. What should we do now? Li Zikin asked. The national teacher took out a whole bottle of red pills and said, Master Li, for the sake of the Li family's eternal generations, you should also make some sacrifices. The national teacher did not dare to continue to attack Niu Niu. He was afraid of being backlashed again. The backlash of killing twice was superimposed, and he was afraid that he would be killed directly. His words were hinting that Li Zikin should do it himself. With his pills, the other party could suppress the backlash for a short time. Sometimes, as long as you hold on, things will be over. Li Zikin knew that if he took action, he would definitely not survive. How did you kill her back then? Li Zikin asked. The imperial master shook his head, I told you that you are not from my family, and I cannot tell you the family tradition. Even if I am still alive, I have not had a good life these years. Is there no other way? The imperial master said, it depends on whether you want to sacrifice yourself or the entire Li family to be buried with you. Li Zikin heard this, his face was gloomy. At this time, in the palace, the Queen Mother was full of joy. Really? Did you really see Taoist Zhang? Find a way to invite him into the palace. Madame Sun was also very happy for her master, and said, Don't worry, madam, we have just found someone and handed over the sign. We should be almost at Shaokong Palace now. Not long after, a voice came from outside the door. Please come in quickly, the Queen Mother said anxiously. Taoist Zhang still looked like an immortal. He bowed to the Queen Mother and said, I haven't seen you for several years. Your Majesty is still as charming as ever. The Queen Mother sighed, so many years have passed. Taoist Mingke is still the same. He hasn't aged at all. When she was still a girl, Taoist Zhang looked like he is now. She couldn't help but wonder if there is really a way to live forever in this world. There is no way to live forever in this world. It's just the greed of some greedy people. I will die sooner or later. Taoist Zhang looked open-minded. When the Queen Mother heard that there was no way to live forever in this world, she was disappointed for a moment, but she quickly cheered up and talked about Li's matter. Queen Mother, can I take a look at this person's face? Taoist Zhang asked. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 437. When the Queen Mother heard Taoist Zhang say it's not witchcraft, she couldn't help but show disappointment on her face. If it was about witchcraft, the Queen Mother would be sure to drag the entire Li family into the water, instead of tolerating them half dead now. Madame Sun, accompany Taoist Zhang to Guanja Palace. I can't bear to see the Li family, the Queen Mother said. Old Madame Sun immediately agreed. Coincidentally, at this time, Niu came in and jumped into the Queen Mother's arms. When the Queen Mother saw the little girl, all her worries disappeared immediately, and she called her sweetheart. Taoist Zhang, who was about to leave, stopped and looked at Niu in the Queen Mother's arms. Queen Mother, can I take a look at this little girl's face first? Taoist Zhang asked. The Queen Mother had originally planned to do so, and nodded when she heard this. Niu got up from the Queen Mother's arms, turned to look at Taoist Zhang, frowned slightly, This Taoist, I seem to have seen him before. Taoist Zhang didn't expect Niu to still remember him, and said with a smile, "Little girl, when you came to Beijing, we met at the dock, and I wanted to see your face at that time." At that time, Gu Mingda felt that this man was superstitious, and the Gu family had always been taboo about Taoist priests, so they naturally stopped him from reading faces. Now that the Queen Mother didn't stop him, Taoist Zhang saw it clearly, and after looking carefully for a long time, he kept saying, "Strange and strange." "Taoist, what's strange? Please tell me," the Queen Mother said anxiously. Taoist Zhang didn't answer immediately, but counted with his left hand, twisted his beard with his right hand, and kept muttering. After twisting off several strands of beard on his face, the doubts on his face were not resolved, but he said, "Queen Mother, I will finish reading Lady Li's face first, and I will talk about other things later." The Queen Mother nodded helplessly. After Taoist Zhang left, Niu said, "Grandma Queen Mother, you seem to trust this old Taoist priest very much." The Queen Mother said, "When I was still married, I met him once. At that time, he determined that I would be extremely wealthy in the future. He is a god who can predict the future. I am old and I don't know if I can see you get married in the future. Let him look at your fate. If you have no worries in your life, I can rest assured and close my eyes in the future." The Queen Mother not only planned to let Taoist Zhang look at Niu, but also planned to let him look at concubine Shun to find out whether she was pregnant with the future emperor. Concubine Shun's belly was so big that the imperial hospital could already tell the gender of the fetus, but the result was not what the Queen Mother wanted. Niu snuggled into the Queen Mother's arms and whispered, "Grandma Queen Mother, you and my father's ideas are really different." The Queen Mother became interested and asked, "What did your father say?" Niu said, "It took me a long time to understand what my father said. He said there was no need to tell fortunes, because telling fortunes is equivalent to interfering with the future." The Queen Mother asked, "What do you mean by that?" "If you get a good result, you will naturally be worry-free, but you will also lose the surprise for the future. If you get a bad result, maybe fortune-telling is also a part of fate, and it will lead you to a bad result." After thinking about it for a while, the Queen Mother understood the meaning of these words and was stunned for a moment. She thought of the frowning and thoughtful look of Taoist Zhang just now, and she didn't even dare to let Niu listen to the result of Taoist Zhang's face reading. "Your father has profound knowledge, you should learn more from him," the Queen Mother said. Niu raised her head proudly. She was as happy as she was when Gu Mingda was praised. She said, "I will definitely learn more from Daddy." Master Zhang watched Guanju Palace for half an hour, and Li's face was filled with fear. "You took something you shouldn't have taken," Master Zhang said. She knew better than anyone else where Li's prosperity over the past decade came from. When she heard this, she immediately showed a panic expression on her face. "If it comes to me, it's naturally mine. There are so many things in this world that people take things by trickery and robbery. Why can't I do the same? This is mine," she shouted to Master Zhang. Taoist Zhang looked at her without any sympathy, and only said, "Then you are now like this, which is what you deserve, you should accept it." How could Li stand such words, and wanted to rush up to fight, but Chunying was surprisingly strong and knew some basic boxing and kicking skills. Even though Li was now bloated, Chunying could kick her to the ground with one foot. "Taoist Zhang, do you still want to take a look in Guanju Palace?" "Is there anything inappropriate?" asked old Nanny's son. Taoist Zhang shook his head and said, "It's enough to see her." When they returned to Shaokong Palace, Niu was nestling in the Queen Mother's arms eating snacks. "Queen Mother, I already know the cause and effect," Taoist Zhang said. The Queen Mother thought of what Niu had just said. Once she knew the result, she would be personally involved. She was afraid that it would be a bad result, or a bad result created by herself. She asked someone to take Niu away first. Niu Niu didn't like to listen to fortune-telling, so she left honestly. After hesitating for a long time, the Queen Mother first told Gu Mingde about his opinion on fortune-telling. Taoist Master Zhang smiled and said, "This Lord Gu is a very insightful person, but predicting the future has always been a very basic technique." The Queen Mother was shocked when she heard this and asked, "What do you mean, Taoist Master?" It is already a great achievement for an ordinary Taoist priest to be able to predict with 70% accuracy, but there is another kind of people who can interfere with the fate, or even, swap the fate of two people, so that people who should have been in a high position fall into a trough, and people who should have fallen into the quagmire enjoy all the wealth in the world, Taoist Zhang said. When the Queen Mother heard this, her heart was beating wildly, and she felt that she had grasped something vaguely. "Li, what did Li do behind the scenes?" asked the Queen Mother. "Your Majesty should have a queen, but her fate was stolen by Li." Taoist Zhang did not keep it a secret. The Queen Mother did not know that the Emperor had a wife who appeared in his dream. She thought that over the years, whether it was the request of the court officials or the crooked entanglement of Li, the Emperor only had the idea of establishing a queen 8 years ago. Since he ascended the throne, although he has enriched the harem, the queen position has always been vacant. The Emperor has always said to the outside world that he is waiting for someone who is qualified to be the mother of the country. 8 years ago, the Emperor had the idea to discuss with the Empress Dowager about making Li the Empress, but later the Imperial Astronomical Observatory reported the matter to heaven and earth, and several incense sticks were lit, but before they were all burned, the incense sticks died. In such an unlucky situation, the Emperor was too embarrassed to mention it again, and even if Li was favored again, he never thought of making Li the Empress. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 438. The Queen Mother didn't care much about the destined queen, and only asked, "Since Mrs. Li has stolen her destiny, why can't she become the queen?" Zhang Daozang did not hide anything and said, "The Queen Mother, some people's destiny cannot be stolen. Even if you steal it reluctantly, you will not get everything, and the thief will also suffer the backlash. These people with great luck are also being stolen. Called people with broken lives, they can always survive in desperate situations. Even if their luck and destiny are stolen, as long as they are given enough time to recuperate, their destiny will gradually return to its original position." The Queen Mother said, "Will my son still be granted the title of queen?" Zhang Daokang said, "She was destined to be the queen, maybe more than 10 years ago, maybe more than 10 years later." The Queen Mother immediately understood that this person would become the next emperor's queen. But she had more on her mind and couldn't help but ask, "Can a person with such great luck just become a queen?" The Queen Mother is in the royal family, so she naturally takes a longer-term view than ordinary people. Even being a queen has many dissatisfactions. If she is really lucky, shouldn't she become a powerful emperor? Zhang Daokang said, "Empress Dowager, not all lucky people will eventually gather in the royal family. Do you know about Mizu?" The Queen Mother nodded. "There are many Mizu temples in the southeast. Fishermen always go to the Mizu temple to offer incense and worship before going to sea, praying for Mizu's blessing to go to sea smoothly." Zhang Daozang continued, "I don't dare to speculate on the future of a person with great luck. I only know that when you meet such a person, those who follow her will prosper, and those who go against her will perish. Whether she is a man or a woman does not have much impact on her. This way the beloved Son of Heaven, when he comes to the world, he is destined to change the world. Then can this person threaten my son's empire?" The Queen Mother would always be worried if such an existence was placed outside. Zhang Daozang shook his head and said, "The secret must not be leaked." The Queen Mother frowned slightly, but then she thought about it. Her son was now ruled by a peaceful and prosperous age. Even if he was such a lucky person, it would not be easy to overthrow him. Maybe this person would be the queen of the next emperor in the future, and the dynasty would change. This is an ordinary thing. After the Queen Mother figured it out, she put away the worry on her face and asked, "Taoist priest, can you help me so that the fate stolen by the Li family can be returned to its original owner as soon as possible?" Although she didn't know who the original person was, she just wanted Li to die as soon as possible. Zhang Daozang explained, "I don't know who helped Madame Li do this in the first place. The person who tied the bell must also untie it." The Queen Mother immediately said, "The person who did this is probably a national teacher." Zhang Daozang did not ask about the affairs of the capital for a long time, and asked, "Who is the national preceptor?" "Aragaki Akira." As soon as the Queen Mother said this name, she saw Taoist Zhang's face suddenly turned extremely ugly. "Taoist?" the Queen Mother asked. "This evil?" The Queen Mother always saw Daozang Zhang smiling, but she didn't expect him to be so angry. "Is this person related to the Taoist priest?" the Queen Mother asked. "His father is my senior brother, so he is my nephew after all. I gave him the name. He can bring out the ordinary, but I hope that he will know right from wrong and take the right path. In the end, all my efforts are in vain," said Daozang Zhang. The Queen Mother did not expect that there was such a connection, and said, "More than 10 years ago, this person fell in love with the Li family. The Li family entered the palace as the queen, and in turn helped him become the youngest national preceptor. He sacrificed blood to a young boy. The matter of the virgin was found out, and now she is missing." Zhang Daozang only felt that bad news was coming one after another, blood sacrifice of boys and girls. That's right. If he didn't do this, how could he survive to this day? The Queen Mother's eyes moved slightly and she said, "Taoist master, can you find a way to find this person? Even if it is not for the stolen life blade, it is also for the sake of so many children. The children are all innocent." Zhang Daokang said, "Don't worry, Queen Mother, Pandeo will do his best to help my senior brother clean up his family and give justice to those children." Taoist Zhang agreed happily, and the Queen Mother was so convinced that she asked, "Taoist, will my dear baby be able to have a worry-free life in the future?" Zhang Daokang understood the Queen Mother's heart and nodded readily to reassure her. The Queen Mother planned to invite concubine Shun over, but Taoist Zhang had already stood up and said goodbye, saying, "The palace rules are strict and it is inconvenient for me to stay for a long time, so I will say goodbye." Before the Queen Mother could agree, he had already turned around and left. The Queen Mother was unable to stop her, so she didn't say anything. Everyone was a smart person, and Taoist Zhang behaved like this. Obviously he didn't want to meet concubine Shun. "Hey, it seems that this throne will eventually fall into the hands of others," the Queen Mother sighed with emotion. Grandma Sun immediately comforted her and said, "Your Majesty, Taoist Zhang didn't say anything either. Maybe concubine Shun is carrying your precious grandson in her belly." The Queen Mother forced a smile and said, "After so many years, it's time to look away. My granddaughter is the beloved daughter of the AI family." Grandma Sun helped the Queen Mother get up. When she entered the side hall, she saw Niu Niu and Li Xian sitting on the table together. The two villains were practicing Chinese calligraphy. Although neither of them spoke, watching them from a distance made the Queen Mother feel comfortable. "It's so pleasing to the eye. It's truly a match made in heaven," the Queen Mother sighed with a smile. Grandma Sun on the side quickly responded and said, "Master Xian thinks of Niu Niu in everything. Princess Jing is also kind. If you can find such a considerate and sensible husband, you don't have to worry about Niu Niu's life in the future. If you are worried, please ask Daozang Zhang to help you combine the two children's horoscopes." The Queen Mother looked at the two children who were doing their homework, but she made a decision in her heart. If concubine Shun really gave birth to a girl, she would support Li Xian in his bid for the throne. Although she was old, she could tell the difference between sincerity and falsehood. Although Li Xian was young, he was already quite gentlemanly. Niu Niu would definitely not suffer if she married him. The Queen Mother felt that the time with Niu Niu seemed to pass very quickly, and it was time to leave the palace in a blink of an eye. It gets dark early in winter, and Niu Niu took advantage of the sun not completely setting to get on the carriage accompanied by the palace people. Gu Mingde had just finished a day of teaching, and dragged his slightly tired body to the palace gate. After getting on the carriage, he patted his daughter's head and said, "Dad, close your eyes for a while, and call me when you get to East Street." Zhang Yuniang wanted to eat the candied dates on East Street, and Gu Mingde was still thinking about it. Niu Niu nodded obediently, holding a 9-linked ring in her hand and playing with it, and was very obedient not to disturb her father. As the sky gradually darkened, fewer and fewer people were on the street. Before reaching East Street, the carriage suddenly stopped when passing through a sparsely populated alley. "Are we there yet?" Gu Mingde asked. But what responded to him was the sound of arrows. "Master and Miss, run!" After Chi Das Han, the driver, shouted this, he fell heavily to the ground. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 439. Gu Mingde jumped off the carriage with his daughter in his arms and looked for cover everywhere. It was strange that he didn't know how to fight and his body was not very flexible, but he dodged all the arrows without even scratching his skin. He looked at the arrows that fell on the ground, each with a faint blue color, and 2 words immediately appeared in his mind: poisonous. The attackers this time were completely rushing to kill him and Niu Niu, but he didn't know whether the target of this group of people was him or Niu Niu. Niu Niu nestled in her father's arms and didn't dare to speak. Gu Mingde had taught her a long time ago that if she couldn't help, she should try not to drag her feet. The little girl was afraid that her voice would affect her father's judgment. Arrows fell like rain. Many times, it was obvious that they could not be avoided, but Gu Mingde's figure would always dodge them with a strange twisted posture as if he had predicted the future. Sir, this man, is he a god? Otherwise, why can he always dodge? The assassins who were shooting arrows in the dark felt very strange at this moment. Their rain of arrows helped Li Ziqin to eliminate many enemies in the dark. This was almost the Li family's most powerful skill. As he spoke, Gu Mingde's body was in a state of reverse bow, and the arrow almost brushed past his forehead. This scene fell into the eyes of the assassins, further proving that Gu Mingde was blessed by heaven. But Gu Mingde himself didn't understand why he bent down inexplicably, and it was precisely because of this sudden and strange posture that he could dodge the fatal arrow. Li Ziqin looked at this scene, and his heart was so painful. He didn't even dare to say that this action was for killing Niu Niu. He told his subordinates that he was ambushing Gu Mingde. Each arrow was quenched with a deadly poison. Such a deadly poison is not easy to obtain. Like this group of men, they are almost the last strength in his hands now. If you don't succeed, you will die. He knew that if he failed this time, the whole family would be doomed. And if he succeeded, the queen in the palace would be favored again, and then the Li family would become the top foreign relatives again. Put down the bows and arrows, pick up the swords, Li Ziqin shouted. A group of people put down their bows and arrows and drew their swords. The blades were still glowing with a faint blue color. As long as they cut the opponent's flesh, they would have an 80% chance of ending the opponent's life. Li Ziqin deliberately chose a sparsely populated alley and cleared the area in advance. There was no river nearby. He felt that this time he would be able to do it without any mistakes. Even if he couldn't kill Niu Niu, he could kill Gu Mingde, which would also severely damage the Gu family. After all, according to the national teacher, Gu Mingde was the first helper around the person who broke his life, and killing him was equivalent to cutting off one of his arms. The rain of arrows stopped. Gu Mingde, who was out of breath from dodging, was about to breathe a sigh of relief when he saw a group of people rushing out from the shadows. He was horrified and ran away, but there were people all around him. "My dear, I'll let you down in a while. Run as far as you can. Don't look back, okay," Gu Mingde whispered to his daughter. Naiyuniu had tears in her eyes. She certainly understood why Gu Mingde did this, but now was not the time for love. She nodded to reassure her father and made a wish in her heart, hoping that she and her father could escape. Moo! An eagle cry suddenly resounded through the sky. It spread its wings and swooped down from the sky. Its huge wings hit the assassins' faces, knocking two of them down in an instant. Woof woof woof. A group of wild dogs suddenly jumped out without any warning and bit the masked assassins fiercely. Meow meow meow. A group of night cats jumped down from the wall, waving their claws and scratching at the faces of the masked assassins. "Get out of here! Where did all these cats and dogs come from? These dogs only bite us." A group of animals blocked them, and the masked assassins were tripped and had no way to get out. Gu Mingde looked at the mess and couldn't help but tremble in his heart. He looked down at Naiyuniu. He was very sure that his daughter must have used special abilities. Now was not the time to talk. He held his daughter and ran back to the way they came. If he left here and asked the city guards for help, he could escape. Li Zikin, who was hiding in the shadows, looked at the scene of the animals fighting here and couldn't help but take a breath. The person who broke his life was really full of gold. It was obviously a dead end. Who knew she could attract so many animals to help? But everything will end here, Li Zikin said in his heart. As the killing intent gradually rose, he felt more and more abnormalities in his body. He took out the small porcelain bottle, poured all the red pills in it into his mouth, and then raised the long sword and killed Gu Mingde. Gu Mingde didn't expect that there were assassins hiding, but the cats and dogs were already fighting in one place, and they couldn't spare any more strength at all. Li Zikin knew that this was not the time to talk nonsense, so he stabbed Gu Mingde as soon as he met him. Although he relied on concubine Li to gain momentum, he had practiced martial arts since he was a child and his body was agile, far beyond the reach of ordinary people. Gu Mingde looked at the sword that was stabbing straight at him, and felt that he could not avoid it. Between life and death, he thought a lot, thinking about what to do if his daughter died, what to do if their parents, wives, and children died, and he thought about his second son who had not been found yet. Countless scenes flashed in front of him like a revolving lantern, and Gu Mingde closed his eyes. Bang! The pain in the flesh did not appear as expected, but the sound of metal collision came to his ears. When Gu Mingde opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was a spear. "It's brother Xie," Niu said excitedly. Half a year apart. Gu Mingde didn't expect to see his godson in such a situation. Xie Chuan seemed to be taller than before. At this time, he was holding a spear and standing in front of the father and daughter, like a towering mountain. "Be careful, his sword is poisonous," Gu Mingde reminded. He was afraid that Xie Chuan would be injured by the poison-quenched sword during the battle. "Shameless villain who hides his head and shows his tail," Xie Chuan cursed. Xie Chuan works openly and honestly, so he naturally looks down on the behavior of such a villain who hides in the dark and is as poisonous as a mouse. Li Zikin was filled with despair at this time. He was almost fully prepared. He felt that this assassination would be foolproof, but there were too many unexpected situations. He also knew the young man holding a spear in front of him. He and Xie Xingchuan's father had an affair. After meeting him, he naturally knew Xie Chuan. Xie's father never praised his son in front of everyone, but privately he was very proud, feeling that this child was outstanding and would definitely be able to revive the Xie family in the future. In the past, Li Zikin only thought it was his father Xie who was boasting. Now when he was fighting against this young genius, he realized how difficult it was to deal with that unabashed edge. Li Zikin didn't want to lose the battle, so he cursed fiercely, "Young-mouthed kid." After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 440. But Li Zikin scolded him fiercely, but his heart sank. Xie Chuan is worthy of being the Kylin of the Xie family. He is now supported by his rich experience. He is old and has lived a pampered life for many years. His energy and blood are far inferior to Xie Chuan's. If he keeps fighting, he will definitely lose. Li Zikin already had the idea of retreating in his mind. He thought about running away first and waiting for the future. But as soon as he had this idea, a large number of people holding torches appeared not far away. It's the city guard. This place is remote, and the city guards don't like to come here even if they are patrolling. Li Zikin can't understand how this group of people came so fast. He fought and retreated, wanting to leave this place, but Xie Chuan was keenly aware of his intention and shouted, "He wants to run." The pace of the city guards quickened. After a stick of incense, the battlefield became quiet. Li Zikin's wounded men were dead and wounded. He wanted to run, but the sharp sword in his hand had long been knocked down by Xie Chuan's spear, and he was pinned to his knees on the ground. "Tear off the mask from his face," Xie Chuan said. Immediately, the soldiers guarding the city took action. The mask slipped off, and in the light of the fire, they saw a face that most people present recognized. Gu Mingdan knew that the Li family and the imperial master were behind the scenes, but he did not expect that Li Zikin would actually do it himself. "Master Li, we didn't seem to have any grudges in the past, why do you target me again and again?" Gu Mingda couldn't help but speak. Gu Mingda didn't know about the so-called fate-changing thing. He didn't understand the Li family's motives from the beginning to the end. The Li family had already taken action against him before he found out that the national master had sacrificed blood to the boys and girls. Li Zikin said nothing, but stared at the Gu father and daughter fiercely. Gu Mingda thought about ruling out all the impossibilities, and the rest would be the truth no matter how outrageous it was. He couldn't hold it back and asked, "You hate me, just because I didn't go to that invitation to the banquet? Just because of a banquet?" The surrounding city guards were all listening with their ears pricked up to listen to the grievances between the two people. When they heard what Gu Mingda said, they all looked at Li Zikin. Li Zikin didn't even refute. He didn't want Gu Mingda to know the truth, but it seemed very embarrassing to just admit that he was a person who held a grudge because of a banquet. The city guards watched Li Zikin fall into an eerie silence. Many of them couldn't help but open their eyes wide, secretly wondering, could it be that this little thing really led to a pursuit that risked life and death? They couldn't help but murmur in their hearts that Master Li was too stingy. "Gu Mingda, it's just the winner and the loser. Stop talking nonsense. If you want to kill or behead, please do as you please," Li Zikin said. Gu Mingda glanced at him in surprise and said to the city guards, "Master Li is a third-rank official of the imperial court. This matter is of great importance. I would like to trouble you to lock him up in the prison of Jingzhou Mansion. I will hand over the sign now." Gong asked to see His Majesty to discuss how to deal with it. "Maybe we can find out the whereabouts of the criminal Aragaki Akira." When Li Zikin heard the words from the third rank, he looked at Gu Mingda with hatred in his eyes. He was originally a third-rank official. If it weren't for the exchanges with Gu Mingda was promoted and he was demoted, he wouldn't think so. "It was because I had done something wrong by stealing my popularity, but I felt it was hateful that others took back my things." "Gu Mingda, you are worthy of interrogating me," Li Zikin said fiercely, and then he hit his sword with his head. The sword was smeared with poison, and it would be fatal if touched. Gu Mingda was unable to stop him, and Li Zikin already had a scar on his face. The poison took effect quickly. He spit out a mouthful of blood and closed his eyes without saying any last words. No one present could have imagined that Li Zikin, who was once the top dignitary in the capital, had a great rescue mission and had stirred up troubles in the capital for several years, would die in such an unnamed alley in such a miserable state. Niu Niu raised her head and only had time to say to Gu Mingde, "I want to sleep." The little girl tilted her head and lost consciousness, and was hugged by Gu Mingde, who was well prepared. Gu Mingde first asked several city guards to help send Qi Das Han's body back home. When the assassin attacked, Qi Das Han, a longtime follower and coachman, was the first to be hit by an arrow and died of severe poison. His horse was also poisoned and died. A group of people walked to the Gu family. The Gu family had long been in panic because the father and daughter had not returned home. At this time, they saw Qi Das Han's body coming back. They grabbed Gu Mingde, Niu Niu, and Xie Chuan and looked up and down for a long time. Niu Niu was frightened and fainted. It was not convenient for Gu Mingde to tell his parents about Niu Niu's special ability, so he could only give this reason. Mrs. Gu was so distressed that she burst into tears and said, "The Li family is really hateful. We didn't provoke them, but they actually did such a cruel thing." It was getting late, so Gu Mingde left Xie Chuan to stay at Gu's house. He also comforted Qi Das Han's wife and daughter. De Shan is loyal to his master. Tomorrow I will send someone to free you from your slavery. In the future, your daughter will be married off as the goddaughter of the Gu family, Gu Mingde promised his wife. Mrs. knew that this incident was an accident. Although she was heartbroken by her husband's sudden death, the Gu family's handling of the matter was considered kind. Her daughter was freed from slavery. As long as the Gu family is prosperous, she will definitely find a good family in the future, and so will their mother and daughter. I have someone to rely on for life. And things outside the palace were also reported to the palace in the shortest possible time. Li Ziqin personally carried out the assassination, and now he has committed suicide to apologize. This news fell into the ears of the emperor and the queen mother, and both of them felt as if they had heard some big joke. When the Empress Dowager heard that Niu Niu was frightened and fainted, she arranged for the imperial physician to go out of the palace to treat her overnight. She could not go to bed until she learned that the imperial physician had returned to the palace and that Niu Niu was fine. Gu Mingde and his wife were both on the list of people to enter the palace the next day. Gu Mingde went to report to the emperor, and Zhang Yuniang accepted the Empress Dowager's summons. "Don't worry, Empress Dowager, Niu Niu had woken up before I entered the palace, and the imperial physician also said that she would recover after a few days of rest. You don't have to worry too much," Zhang Yuniang said softly. The worry on the faces of the Empress Dowager and Shunfei did not fade at this time. "It's good that she is fine. When she gets better, let her stay in the palace for a few days. I will take good care of her." The Empress Dowager took the opportunity to let Niu Niu stay in the palace for a while. Zhang Yuniang did not dare to refuse. The emperor's questioning of Gu Mingde was much more detailed than that of the harem. "Li Ziqin really didn't explain anything," the emperor asked. Gu Mingde said, "Li Ziqin did not want to be tried and did not want to expose the whereabouts of the criminal Xinu Enming, so he chose to commit suicide." In fact, this kind of non-explanation is also a kind of explanation. At least it proves that Xinu Enming has been with Li Ziqin during this period. If you follow Li Ziqin to investigate, you may be able to find their hiding place during this period. In a dilapidated temple on the outskirts of Beijing, Taoist Zhang walked in with a compass and a gloomy face. He looked at the dilapidated statue above the dilapidated temple and said, "Come out." After a while, the statue moved away and a slender figure walked out from inside.